Russian parliament speaker claims Russia is the only country with freedom. Vladimir Putin proposes to start indoctrination in kindergartens. A Russian official calls to drop a large bomb onto London. Russian businesses are still using foreign software. Russian banks start protesting the central bank orders. The politicians are calling for imprisonment for criticizing the USSR. Russian church discovers the cause of autism, and it's shocking. And the biggest news of the week is the signs of social collapse start appearing all over Russia. Howdy, howdy, friends. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Welcome to Fridays. Fridays are always fun. Every Friday I give you crazy news update, straight out of the mad circus that Russia has unfortunately become. First things first, there is no such absurdity that cannot be realized in Russia these days. Please remember that. And the news, I call them crazy news from Russia, the news of Russia that matter and that you will not find in any mainstream media. Before I jump to the news, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please like this live stream right now. Like it in advance. It really helps to spread the word about the channel and to attract new viewers. If you don't like it later on, you can always unlike it. But now, please, do me a favor, like it in advance. And let's jump straight into the news. And let me start with the good news. It's always collapse, troubles, economy, totalitarianism in Russia. So it's got to be good news once in a while, right? Well, wait, this is the good news, just like what we all have been waiting. Russian parliament speaker Vyacheslav Volodin, this is the guy, announced that Russia has chosen freedom, period. He said that Russians live in the country where human rights are respected. At a recent parliament session, he also said that there is no alternative information in the West, and freedom exists only in Russia. And let me quote the good speaker. They in the West do not have alternative information. They have closed down everything. We, on the contrary, have all the media stations in the world broadcasting, and the social networks too. But we are the freest country, unquote. Wow, just wow. My eyes have just opened. Folks, I had been sleeping some kind of a lethargic sleep. I thought things weren't going too well in Russia. I thought that, the state role has been on the increase, the freedoms have been taken away from Russian people. And I've been speaking about that, but the good speaker Volodin just cleared everything up. Now I listen to him and I know everything is great. The good speaker wouldn't lie, would he? So, Russia has chosen freedom. Hooray. That's real good news. But there's a little catch. Hooray. A tiny little bit, It's real good news for as long as you don't think, for as long as you shut your brain off. Because when you start thinking, some kind of a cognitive dissonance appears. Russia has chosen freedom, says Volodin, and the very same Volodin bans Facebook and Instagram, labeling them as extremist organizations. Russia has all the information in the world, and the West doesn't, says Volodin. And the very same Volodin just blocked YouTube in Russia completely. It's odd. But you know what? I give it a thought. I think I know what's going on. What Vyacheslav Volodin said is called Putin's freedom. Then it all starts making sense. Whew. Another news is breathtaking. I'm telling you, it has taken my breath away. Are you ready? Russia strongly condemns Israeli invasion of Lebanon and calls on Tel Aviv to cease hostilities and withdraw troops. That is the official statement of Russia's foreign ministry, the Foreign Office. I quote, "It is obvious that such a step taken by the Israeli military and political leadership will lead to further escalation of violence in the Middle East region. Russia strongly condemns the attack on Lebanon and calls on the Israeli authorities to immediately cease hostilities and withdraw troops from Lebanese territory and engage in a real search for peaceful ways to resolve the Middle East conflict." Huh? That's Russia saying that? What? What the fudge? To cease hostilities? To withdraw troops? To search for peaceful ways to resolve conflict? Russia that has invaded neighboring Ukraine with all its military might, with all it had, and stole Ukrainian lands, that killed thousands of Ukrainians, and it brags every time it kills Ukrainian troops, and it's demanding Israel to search for peaceful solution? That is breathtaking and amazing. Russia 2024. I actually love that. I do. It's a good plan. How about Russia starts with itself? Kind of to show the world an example, to lead by the example. Do you think it'll take, withdraw troops from Ukraine, return the lands that it has stolen, and will be trying to find a peaceful solution voluntarily? Nah, no. Instead, and that's what another news is about, instead, they're doing something pretty amazing, but not in a good way as well. In kindergartens, conversations about the important might be introduced soon. Well, Vladimir Putin supported the idea of conducting patriotic lessons for the youngest Russians who attend kindergartens. Putin also noted that such lessons in kindergartens are delicate topic that requires sincerity and professionalism. Are delicate? Because the children have not yet learned how to speak well, but they should already be talking about the important things. Then the important thing lesson, the lessons of the important, it's basically indoctrination of Russian children. And it started in September of 2022 with, I believe, grade 3 and up, and then it has spread to the first graders and the second graders as well. Now all in Russian schools, all school children are obliged to attend these lessons, and if they skip, then teachers report on many occasions, it's been reported, they report to the KGB, and the KGB knocks on the parents' door asking, why isn't your child attending the lessons of the most important class at school. Now, children are explained why Russia attacked Ukraine and why it's justified. It teaches them of the so-called Russian world, etc. Indoctrination at its best. I've been there, done that. The USSR, you know. I think Russia is even better than the USSR now. And now they are trying to extend it to kindergartens. Well, I have a suggestion to the author of this kindergarten lessons. Why don't you take your lessons and shove them up down your throat? That's the best approach to such lessons. And boy, am I glad my son doesn't attend kindergarten and school in Russia, or what? Now, the next news will remind you that Russia is a peaceful country. Really, it's, you know, it's peaceful. It's the head of Russian cross-country ski federation proposed to drop a large bomb on London to return Russian cross-country skiers to international competitions. You heard me right. That's exactly what was said. I did not believe it. I fact-checked, and you know, this is the evidence. It's been in the Russian news everywhere. So this is true. This is true. It's been in the... Russia could achieve the return of its athletes to international tournaments only by radical, forceful methods, said Yena Val, the president of the Russian cross-country ski racing team, the head of the federation. A famous cross-country skier in the past, by the way. I remember watching her winning all kinds of gold medals back in late 80s in Calgary and Lillehammer and other competitions. You know, she was great, but that's what she's become. Let me quote Yena Val. It seems to me that if we had thrown some serious bomb into the center of London, everything would have already ended and we would have been allowed everywhere. Russia's struggle with the entire outside world has been going on for centuries. We've never been loved, even when they pretended to love us. They always stand with a sharp sword behind their backs, and probably our strength irritates the whole world. I unquote. Now, if Yena Val was very little traveled, if she hasn't seen the world, that's one thing. But she is the head of one of Russia's best athletic teams. She's been all over the world as an athlete and as a bureaucrat, and she knows exactly what's going on. So that's called, in a good society, it's called selling your soul to the devil. Yena Val added that sooner or later, Russia will return to international competitions, but it will not happen soon. If 1 year ago I said that we would be returned to the competition after the end of the special military operation, that's what they call war in Russia, now I understand that even after the end of the SVO, special military operation, nothing will happen quickly. It will take more than 1 year to return to the international arena, Val summed up. And I think Yena Val is very right there. It will definitely take more than 1 year for Russian athletes to return to the international competitions. And do you know why? Because of Yena Val and the ones like her. She suggests to drop a large bomb on London, and the others have been dropping hundreds of real hundreds of thousands of real bombs all over Ukraine, killing hundreds of thousands of people. They are mad dogs. And it's become clear for me, it'll take at least one generation for Russia to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because the mad dogs are gonna go first. Moving to the next news. Russian enterprises of the metallurgical, energy, and chemical industries continue to use foreign software in more than 98% of their projects. Pretty much, in all projects. About 80% of such enterprises work with solutions from Siemens. That's a German company. It has an awesome software. I believe it's Siemens NX suite. We used it. My company used it. We worked with Siemens. Very expensive, but the cutting edge, the best of the world. So 80% of them are using Siemens software, and 18% work with other foreign products. This data was obtained from Severstal study published in a newspaper called Vedomosti. After the Western companies left, the Ministry of Industry and Trade created a working group specifically to develop domestic software solutions. The companies that are interested and a part of the group include Russian major corporations such as Severstal, a large steel producer, Gazprom Neft, an oil company, Transneft, also an oil company, and others. According to the plan, the prototypes of components to replace foreign process automation technologies should have appeared by the end of 2024. However, at the moment, only 10% of companies have achieved localization, and 60% of the companies are still looking for solutions. The dependence on Western technologies remains high, especially in metallurgy, chemistry, and oil refining. But according to Vladimir Putin, everything is fine. Everything is dandy. Everything is going according to the plan. I wonder who's the designer of that plan and who the plan benefits. Let's move to the next news. The father of 14 children from Tatarstan was killed in Ukraine. He signed a military contract on the 16th of July, not too long ago, when Tatarstan raised the sign-up bonus to 1 million rubles. So basically, he cashed in 1 million, which is $12,000, or a little less, 11.5. And also he received a bonus from federal government. I believe it was 200,000 rubles, a little over $2,000. So he signed up on the 14th of July, and in September, he came back in a coffin. 14 kids. You know what? I have nothing to add to this news. And speaking of the money, the next news is unique. Because for the first time, Russian banks are protesting the Central Bank of Russia's decision. Russian banks have expressed disagreement with the legislative initiative, which implies a ban on increasing limit on credit cards to a single borrower. This was reported by Rosbusiness Consulting with a reference to the letter that the National Council on Financial Market, or NSFR, sent to the Bank of Russia, the Ministry of Finance, the Federation Council, the upper chamber of the parliament, and the chairman of Parliament's Committee on the Financial Market, Anatoly Aksakov. Bankers find an increase in the credit limit more convenient than the option of signing an additional agreement to open an additional line of credit. You know, This news proved the point that I made in the recent live stream, talking of a huge bubble in Russia's financial industry, in Russian banks. The central Bank of Russia starts taking actions, but the banks are not eager to comply. They refuse the actions. Okay. Now, this is what's going on. You see, when a bank, Russian bank, issues a credit card to a person, and the person maxes out, then it's much easier to just increase the limit on that credit card than to issue him another credit card, then another credit card, and so forth, okay? It's easy. All you have to do, go in your app and press a couple buttons, and boom, you have another few $1,000s at your disposable. And I guess that's how they hook in people. They're giving them easy money, okay? I still have a couple credit cards in Russia. I haven't used them in 3 years, but their limits keep on raising. You know, I don't spend any money. I can't even spend anything because they don't work outside Russia, but they keep on increasing my limits, and they keep on sending me SMS messages. Oh, dear Konstantin, your credit limit has been increased. I don't need any. But anyway, and the central bank knows that. And it's very scared, and I made an entire live stream about that. The central bank knows that when the banks run out of money, and how that's going to happen, the defaults. People will start defaulting and file for bankruptcies more and more. And then the central bank will have to step in and bail the banks out with its reserve fund money. But there's no money. All the money has gone to the war. And we clearly see it from the budget, Russian national budget of 2025. And the central bank says, hey, stop. No more money to people. Stop giving out credits. You know, that's it. And the banks are coming back and they're saying, you know what, we don't care. We need money now. We make money from this credit now. And what's going to happen tomorrow, that's your business. That's your problem, okay? And this is what's going on. Like I said, I made a live stream. I dedicated the entire stream to this problem. I think it's one of the potentially disastrous problems, and the bubble will burst sooner or later. Now, enough about banking and money. Before moving to the next news, I want to thank everyone who is helping me by watching, by pressing like button, by sending me emails with good wishes, uplifting messages, everyone who prays along with me, and everyone who sends love. Everyone who buys coffees at buymeacoffee.com, who has signed up to become patron of Inside Russia and who's transferred me funds directly via PayPal, thank you so very much. Still demonetized, but I don't care. I keep on going. Not sitting on my butt, trying to figure out what to do, in constant talks, but no news yet. But anyway, you can count on me, monetized or not, to keep on going every single day, as long as I can physically. Thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the next news comes from the Communist Party of Russia. And guess what? The Communist Party of Russia is calling to create a new law that will allow to imprison regular people for criticizing and discrediting the USSR. I don't know what to say. This is so insane. It's insane on top of insane, on top of insane, on top of insane. What the hell is going on in my country, with my people? Okay, the USSR was the evil empire. The USSR was bad. I lived there. I was born and I was raised in the USSR. And I remember not too many good feelings about the country. There's definitely good feeling about me growing up and my mom and dad and the family and all of that childhood. But as of the country, no, no. And they want to put me to prison for publicly criticizing it. I'm an economist. I studied market economy in Russia and in the USA. And you know what? I can make 150 million cases against planned economy of the USSR, against totalitarianism. But I still can make it freely. But soon, if I make these cases, that's going to be enough ground for me to be imprisoned. They also urge for imprisonment for discrediting and criticizing the Russian Empire. That was before the USSR. You know, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking perhaps they are doing it on purpose. Perhaps they don't really care about the USSR and the Russian Empire. Perhaps it's just a win-win for Russian state. Look, if you say something, right, and that's absolutely normal, then these people arrest you, fine you, place a large fine, automatically deduct from your bank account, send you to prison, and then immediately will come to you and say, hey, we'll let you out if you sign up to go and fight in Ukraine, into the meat grinder. So you see, to them, it's a win-win-win-win. They don't lose anything. They just enslave one more man, and, you know, they suck money out of him. They suck life out of him, and they send him to the Ukraine, you know. Insane on top of insane. And the next news also comes from, well, Russia. No, it doesn't come from Russia. It comes from Elevator. Now, if you follow my live streams for quite some time, you will know that I've been talking a lot about Russia deteriorating, corroding, and everything in the society deteriorating, including physical things, machines, mechanisms, elevators. Now, the next news comes from one of the elevators in a Moscow hospital. And check this out. I translate, we're stuck in an elevator. There are 11 of us. And this lady says 10. There are 10 of us now because they evacuated one of the people through the top opening, you know, in the ceiling. Among these people, there was a pregnant woman, 6 months pregnant, and a patient after a heart attack. And I take it they had to evacuate the patient after a heart attack. People started running out of air in the elevator, and they spent their considerable amount of time. This happened in the medical clinic in Moscow, in the medical clinic number 115. And all those who were inside stuck were patients who came to the appointments, you know, in the morning to the clinic. People began to panic, obviously, as they were running out of air. And one of the patients managed to be lifted through the hatch as she needed emergency help. She was not feeling well at all. This is not the first news of the elevator. They have become regular. I report them every week in Friday updates. I believe 2 last weeks were news about the elevators. Plain and simple. Things started breaking. And not just elevators, okay? Elevators, it just made national news. That's why I know about it. But there are plenty of those who haven't. They break. 3 people died last week because an elevator fell down. Okay? So Russia is not well. And this is just the beginning. By the way, there will be many more news like that. And if you want to keep up with other breaking news from Russia, consider becoming patron of Inside Russia. Every single day, I carefully select 9 news that I find important, and along with my analysis and commentaries, I make such news available to patrons on patreon.com. So if you wanted to know things about Russia but didn't know where to ask, now you know. Become patron at patreon.com and get the access to all the news that matter. And I personally value what I do, my product, very highly. I think that 9 news a day, 54 news per week give a pretty good understanding what is happening in Russia. Now, the next news is amusing. Today, a news came out, literally. A weak wheat harvest may lead to higher prices for agricultural products. A company called Rusagrotrans released this news, and it possessed some analytic data. Now, let me remind you, agriculture is something I have been following for past year. In May, Russia started waiting for bad harvest because bad weather. In the central Russia, southern Russia, the breadbasket of Russia, basically, all of a sudden in mid-May, there were sub-zero temperatures in Celsius, frost and snow. And that affected the harvest in a great deal. Now, in August, there was another news. China increased wheat imports from Russia almost 8 times in 7 months of 2024 compared to 2023. In September, there was another news, September the 9th. In Russia, the forecast for wheat harvest has been lowered significantly. And today, the export of flour from Russian Federation in 2024 is planned at the level of 1.5 million tons against 1 million tons in 2023. There was a record harvest in 2023, and 1 million tons of flour was exported. And knowing that would be lower yield, crop yield in 2024 due to many reasons, including weather, flour exports increased by 1.5 times. And China increased wheat imports by a great deal. And by the way, Afghanistan is in the first place for flour supplies from Russia. China is in the second place. They are selling everything out. And Russians will be paying for that this winter with increase in prices for bread and flour. And you know what? Of course, the experts of Russian propaganda, they will explain such price increases by the hostile actions and sanctions from the West and the European Union. Voila. The next news comes from Russian Church. One of the popes turns out to be an expert on autism. I happen to know a thing or two about autism. I used to volunteer at an organization called Maine Handicapped Skiing, or MHS, and I think now it's called Maine Adaptive. Basically, it's an organization at 2 large Maine ski resorts that help disabled people to have fun, to ski, to learn, to socialize, you know. And it was a great experience for me. It was a great organization. But in order to be allowed to volunteer, I had to go through some training. That makes sense because I was to deal with children and adults with certain disabilities, including autism. So one of the parts of the training was learning about children and adults with autism. So exactly what causes autism remains unknown, despite numerous researchers and so many doctors and scientists trying to figure out. It was long mostly presumed that there is a common cause at the genetic, cognitive, and neural levels for the social and non-social components of autism symptoms. It's described as a triad in the classic autism criteria. But it is increasingly suspected that autism is instead a complex disorder whose core aspects have distinct causes that often concur. So no doctor or scientist knows exactly the causes of autism. There are just theories. But last week, the humanity got the answer. A Russian Pope of the Orthodox Church told everyone two major causes of autism. Please watch this.
Аутизм – сложное явление, ныне распространенное, часто последствия прививок, которые вкалывают детям без всякого разбора, без проверки.
Autism is a widespread event that is caused particularly by the family sins and partly by the vaccination. A mix of family sins and vaccines.
Качество прививок, отчасти, конечно, семейные грехи, но больше
Family sins, but mostly
на какие-то
the vaccination.
события.
Different vaccines.
Аутизм
Watch again this guy. He's
ныне распространен.
world expert on autism.
Прививок, которые вкалывают детям без всякого разбора, без проверки качества прививок, отчасти, конечно, семейные грехи, но большей частью грешим мы вот на какие-то события в здравоохранении.
A mix of family sins and the vaccines. The vaccines and the family sins. Bravo! Now we know the answer. I was just thinking, well, this guy just did the humanity such a favor, okay? He needs to get a Nobel Prize. But perhaps he's also an expert on other things, for example, on cancer. Why doesn't he explain us what is the cause of different kinds of cancers? Well, you know what? What about this for a theory? Family sins and the vaccines, the cause of cancer. The cause of autoimmune diseases, the vaccines and the family sins. The cause of all bad conditions, the vaccines and the family sins, okay? Just the combinations, different quantities of sins and the vaccines, they give result in different sickness. Bravo. Oy, what is my country becoming to? Or perhaps the right question is, what has it become? The next news comes from Novosibirsk. Novosibirsk City Hall, the home of the mayor, refused to approve a rally against blocking YouTube due to the fact that YouTube spreads fakes about Russia's special military operation. Well, that's how they call the war in Ukraine. According to the Siberian Express newspaper, the activists wanted to hold a rally against blocking YouTube on September 29th. So they applied, according to the Russian law, you gotta get permission. So they applied to the city hall for an approval on September 13th. And as the newspaper notes, at first, Vice Mayor Maxim Astanin did not coordinate the rally, did not approve the rally, because one of the goals of the rally stated was disagreement with the political censorship. According to Astanin, it was not supported by facts. In other words, he said there is no political censorship in Russia. This is funny. This is a comedy show. So the organizers then changed the application and they changed the goal. And the mayor office still refused. Now it states that the fakes about the war in Ukraine, the SVO, are spreaded on YouTube by YouTube. And they refer to the Article 29 of the Constitution of Russian Federation, which prohibits the propaganda of social, national, and other hatred. Wow. Just wow. YouTube does have censorship. I don't find it that terrible, but it certainly does not allow any social, national, or other hatred. YouTube, the algorithm weeds out stuff like that. You try to upload something like that with hatred and you get a strike where they just simply delete your channel. But I guess Russian government, they don't care, okay? They just need an excuse. The YouTube has been blocked in Russia completely by this, including the decision made by the Speaker of the Parliament, Volodin, okay? And they simply don't want to go against the leadership of Russia. But again, I was thinking about that, and I started with this good news, right? I thought Vyacheslav Volodin said Russia was the freest country in the world. Huh? Oh, I get it now. In Novosibirsk, they just don't know it yet. Internet is blocked, and the news reach there very slowly. They use pigeon mail. And the pigeons are still flying to Novosibirsk. Hey, if you fly on a plane, it's like 4 hours. Pigeons, it takes months and months, okay? I understand now. I'm sure when the pigeons reach Novosibirsk and they will see that Volodin said the freest country in the world, they will allow that rally against YouTube blocking. And the next news is fire. Kolokoltsev, the Minister of Internal Affairs, in other words, the Federal Police, one of the top 3 Siloviks in the country. He explained the inability to raise salaries to district police officers. It's kind of like the bad news he gave to his employees. The Federal Police cannot raise its officers' salaries because the ministry is greatly understaffed and underfunded, said the head of the Federal Police. Understaffed and underfunded, greatly underfunded. Wow. There's no money for district police officers. Those are officers who are on the ground, like patrolling the streets and everything, So there's no money for district police officers. There is no money for doctors. There's no money for teachers. But there is money for the war. There are trillions for the war. They just upped the budget by, I think, 27%, the military budget. So there's plenty of trillions for conducting the war in Ukraine, but there's no money to raise salaries of the district police officers. Fantastic. And the next news comes from Yakutia. It's one of the, it's a province of Russia, the most northeastern province, I believe. It's Yakutia news is also connected with the war in Ukraine. You know, they've been trying to mobilize people in any possible ways, but Russian government's agenda now is to force people to sign the military contracts voluntarily. Okay, and that's what they do. And Yakutia is a perfect example of that. Yakutia Police officers were given an order, and they started going to speak to the heads of village and town administrations to persuade them to recruit the drunks and unemployed residents of the republic, of the province, into the war in Ukraine, according to the law enforcement officers. In this way, these people will be able to find, listen to this carefully, these people will be able to find the meaning of life and get a solid livelihood. So they're going to be sent to Ukraine, where they will find the meaning of life. I wonder what kind of meaning of life is that? To kill innocent people? What? I don't get it. This is pretty touching news for me, you know. Meaning of life is different. Meaning of life is finding God inside your heart, you know. Meaning of life is trying to help people as much as you can. Meaning of life is to be surrounded by those who you love and who love you, and to be happy. But to find meaning of love, going to the front lines in Ukraine, to the meat grinder. Is this the Russian world values? I wish I could speak to those police. I mean, I really don't wish, but it'd be interesting to speak to them, you know. I would have some answers, questions for them. But anyway, according to law enforcement officers, in this way, these people will be able to find the meaning of life and livelihood. And that's just another proof that without war, without signing up and getting crazy sign-up bonus, these people simply cannot sustain themselves economically. That's how great Russia is doing these days. Now, the next news is about... Forgive me about this, a little, you know, hot news, so to speak. I won't beat around the bush, okay? Married people, married couples do not need condoms. Yes, that's the a Russian senator, Milonov, just made a statement about that. Condoms help to avoid abortions, but condoms are artificial measures. It is better to create a family with the right person and give up contraception forever, the senator added. That's the same senator who has been coming up with crazy proposals since 2011, who was going after Madonna, after Rihanna, visiting Russia, you know, trying to get them arrested for spreading, you know, Western values in Russia when they were performing concerts. Recently, he called all people who are into Harry Potter crazy and sick, needed psychiatrist help, you know. That's the guy. So now his next measure is, I wonder if he's going to create and propose a law that forbids production and sales of condoms in Russia. Well, condoms not only used for, you know, prevent pregnancies, but mostly for, you know, prevent diseases. But I guess Milonov doesn't know about that. All right, this is just insane. Insane on top of insane. Before we move to the last news, I'd like to ask you a favor. As usual, please pick 3 news that you liked the most and let me know down in the comments which one they are. That helps me, gives me feedback, and it helps to choose better news next week. So thank you so very much. Which news did you like the most? And the last news, and it's the headliner, and it's about the social catastrophe. Social collapse, in other words. You see, today's live stream name and thumbnail is not a clickbait. I steer away from clickbaits, you know. Thing is, I start seeing the signs of social collapse in Russia. But before, what is social collapse? It is also known as civilizational collapse. It is the fall of a complex human society characterized by the loss of cultural identity and of socio-economic complexity, the downfall of government, and the rise of violence. Possible causes of a society collapse include natural catastrophes, wars, famines, economic collapses, population decline, and mass migration. Basically, when something bad happens to a country on a large scale, just like what's happening to Russia. And you know what? I have always been saying about the economic collapse. But now I'm seeing a bigger picture. Economic collapse is just one part of this grand collapse of Russia, of the empire that is remaining the empire now. This is a much bigger picture, you know. This is a much bigger collapse. Economic collapse, probably not the worst one. It can be easily fixed and it can be survived. I mean, we survived the economic collapse of the USSR, but the social collapse is quite different. Now, why do I think that the social collapse is here? Because I am seeing it happening. I'm seeing the signs. As usual, I look for signs and I put them together. They paint bigger picture. Judge for yourself. I'm going to share this stuff with you. Now, I have a few news pieces, and combined together, they kind of like give us a glimpse of what starts happening in Russia. Alimony in Russia, child support, should make up 3/4 of the income, so that a man who pays, who pays the child support, not only will be paying most of what he makes, but he'll be paying for the rest of his life, says the director of the Institute for Social Economic Research, funded by the state. In his opinion, it is impossible to outlaw divorce, and it's a pity, but it is necessary to make divorces economically so unprofitable by increasing the amount of alimonies, child support, to such levels that men will have 3 pennies left in their pockets after paying child support and would have to work for his former family all their lives. So basically, they want to financially enslave men. You see how they work. Some senator works on a new legislation to leave Russian men with peanuts if they divorce for any reason. And other senators, say like Milonov, propagate against wearing condoms. Again, it's a win-win for the Russian state. You know, a family, children, something doesn't work out, divorce, man is in poverty, and the only place to go is to sign the military contract, get a sign-up bonus, and go to the meat grinder. Win-win for the state, you know. The next news. In Moscow, employees of the great Russian Encyclopedia, Большая Российская Encyclopedia, went on a strike, like street picket, demanding to be paid their salaries for the last 9 months. They are appealing that the staff of the National Scientific and Educational Center, Great Russian Encyclopedia, refers to Putin's speech at the meeting of the Russian Language Council on November 5th, 2019. And Putin then suggested replacing Wikipedia with an electronic version of Great Russian Encyclopedia. And bada bang, bada boom, all of a sudden money was allocated from the federal budget and the work began. However, according to the staff of this company, Encyclopedia Center, the officials have stolen the grant money, and since January 2024, over 400 employees of the publishing house have not received a penny. 9 months. They have written appeals to Rostrud, the government agency that watchdog, for rights of workers, the Ministry of Finance, the government, and Putin himself, with requests to sort out the situation, but they have not received answers, not from any one source they wrote to. Then the employees of this Great Russian Encyclopedia went to the center of Moscow on a picket line to stage a protest. Security forces in uniforms and undercover approached them, harassed them, but no one has been arrested. And I want you to check this out right here. Now, these are police officers, and they were checking the papers, As far as I understand, the lady was not harassed by them, but look what happens after. This guy is a KGB operative, undercover. I've seen them face to face. I've seen them up close, Not a pretty sight, trust me. And this is what he's doing. That is pure harassment. That's just... friends, watch it again. Wow, just wow. The staff of the Great Russian Encyclopedia, at the government order, state contract, has not seen a penny in 9 months, all 400 people. I could be telling you that this Great Russian Encyclopedia is a very historic edition. It's over 100 years old. It holds a historic value and all of that, but that's not really the point. I want to emphasize, these people aren't politically protesting. They simply are owed salaries for 9 months, and they are in such desperation that they go on the streets despite the risks of getting arrested. And this is what state does to them. They send undercover KGB operatives to harass them. Okay, moving to the next news. To move out of emergency housing, you will have to pay now. The current program for resettlement of citizens living in houses under demolition ends in just 3 months, and it will not be renewed. Why? Because it requires lots of money. And you know what? There are other pressing issues right now that require a lot of money, such as war. Remember what happened in Rostov in January? Now, that was January 2024. In 2020, 4 years prior, that house was acknowledged unsafe by the local authorities of Rostov-on-Don, and there was money to move people into like new house to be built. Okay, so for 4 years, people were not moved out of there, and their lives were at risk. And all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, it was expected, but the building collapsed in January of 2024. And people have been out of their apartments for almost a year now, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And now the government will be making them pay. They have been paid, like all Russians who have houses and apartments have are paying for, it's called capital reconstruction. This is included in their utility bills, and that's exactly what the money is for, in case something bad happens, to move to a new place. Okay, but now the Ministry of Construction has presented a new approach that will start on January 1st of this coming year, 2025. Now the residents of emergency houses, just like this one we saw, will have the cost of demolition or repair of the house deducted from compensation. Compensation that will be given them by the state, I guess. And most importantly, people will be obliged to pay extra if they are provided with more expensive living space. You know, that apartments in that building is not fancy, okay? It's just, it was built in the 50s, and it's, you know, apartments there are like 250, 300 square feet, 30 square meters, and they don't cost a lot. And any place in Russia they're moved to, people moved from these apartments, will cost significantly more. I don't really know if there's older people living there, how they gonna come up with money to pay the difference for the new housing. And this is another way that Russian government is screwing its people. Another news. After the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, Russian labor market has lost 2 million workers aged from 19 to 40 years old. That's according to Dmitry Sergeyenkov, the CEO of Headhunter, Russia's largest online headhunting agency, reporting the newspaper The Kommersant. It is those groups that are the most in demand in the labor market, that are particularly valued by the employers, that are most efficient, and they are rapidly declining. People, labor force, you know, people aged from 19 to 40, the number has already decreased by 2 million over the same time. He says, I take it over 2 million since the start of the war, and around 1 million just in the last year. Why? Well, two major reasons. The war in Ukraine, people are selling their souls, get sign-up bonuses and go to fight in Ukraine, or simply people flee, just like us. And labor force is impacted. The next news, the shortage of truck drivers continues to grow in Russia. From January to August, demand for them increased by 58% on year-to-year basis, while the number of applicants have basically stayed the same, and that's a very low number. This follows from the data of the job that Russia's, again, online headhunting agency called headhunter.ru, and is reported by the Kommersant. The next news. Russian authorities are preparing to sequester, means to cut, social spendings from federal budget 2025 to pay the growing bill for the war in Ukraine. The war has already cost Russian taxpayers 22 trillion rubles in 22 to 24 in 2.5 years, and it will cost the Russian federal budget, the taxpayers, another 13 trillion just in 2025 alone. Next year, the spendings under the article social policy, which includes expenses for benefits, subsidies to poor people, pensions, a part of the pension fund of Russia, will decrease by 700 billion rubles, or 10%. That's according to Bloomberg. The war expenses have gone up tremendously. We know the budget now. And education, healthcare, and the social services are going down. And this news combined, they are painting me the picture that the social collapse starts happening. Economic collapse has been happening for quite some time, but you see, this is step number one, because it will lead to social collapse, a much bigger event that is going to consume Russia completely. And I certainly believe that. I start seeing the signs, and I'm sharing them with you. Thank you so much. And now I want you to see what I have to say about Russia's federal budget 2025. I want to discuss that, why I think it's a disaster. I'm going to put a link right over here. Please check it out now.